I've come here to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog is a... Extra points if you understood that reference, but really that was just my way of acknowledging, yes, this game includes swearing, which for a Sonic game is kind of surreal, but they really cranked it up to 11 with the dark tone of this game. And a lot of people's problem with this game is that it is so edgy, or at least it presents itself that way. And also, they don't like it because if you just take a cursory glance at the story, it seems to just be rehashing Shadow's character arc from Sonic Adventure 2, which that's not the full story at all. Really, what's going on here is best understood if you realize what actually happened in terms of the previous two games. So, for Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow is awoken by Eggman. He thinks that the final wish of his friend Maria was for him to get revenge on all of humanity. For whatever reason, this memory is muddled or altered. He has a hard time actually remembering what the wish is, and he just goes with this, and he goes along with Eggman and with the intention of getting the Chaos Emeralds, using them to power the Eclipse Cannon, and basically making humanity pay for what they did to Maria. But then, through the course of the story, we see that Shadow does seem to care for others at some points, and eventually he actually does remember the full thing that Maria said to him, which is not that she wants revenge, just that she wants Shadow to make it so that the people of the Earth could be happy, which in turn seems to give Shadow a purpose, which he has often felt like he has lacked. So we get to that point, and then Shadow helps the others stop the space colony arc from colliding with the Earth and defeat the Bio-Lizard. And then that's where Shadow's story was supposed to end, because he dies at the end of the game, and that was essentially where they were going to leave his character. But then, due to his character's popularity, they decided to bring him back. Not necessarily the best choice, but given that Shadow is probably one of my favorite characters from the franchise, I'm not going to complain. So then, what do you end up with? Well, he comes back in the very next game, and he is awoken from a stasis pod yet again by another person. This time it's Rouge, who is searching for Eggman's secret treasure. And then in that same scene, we get interaction between Shadow and this robot character, Omega, who is actually the final version of the final unit in the E100 series, which Gamma from Sonic Adventure was part of. And those enemies were present in Sonic Adventure 2 as well, so it's very cohesive. But then, either due to her own selfishness or some other reason that we are never told, Rouge does not simply tell Shadow what has happened to him in the past, and he simply tags along with her because if they find Eggman, then he thinks that Eggman, who locked him up in this room with this robot, will in turn tell him about his past. And the few times that Shadow and Eggman actually interact in the story, we see him ask the doctor, "Hey, what do you know about my past?" And Eggman just kind of shrugs him off. He's like, "You have no past." And so that leaves Shadow with not much to go on. And then by the end of the story, spoilers, by the way, if you haven't played the game, but if you play through Team Dark's story to the end, you will find that Eggman's secret treasure is actually just a room full of more Shadows inside of these stasis pods. And we see a broken robot that looks like Shadow in a previous cutscene, So it's kind of implied that these are all fake android models of Shadow, but then it calls into question whether the Shadow we've been playing as the entire game is even the real Shadow, which is also something that was a theme in Sonic Adventure 2. So it's like, is the Shadow that was made aboard the Ark 50 years ago, is that the Shadow that we're playing as now? Or is this just some kind of replica? Which Shadow himself, already being a replica of Sonic, just made before Sonic was even around, ironically. It's kind of just an interesting concept. So that's where the story is left in terms of what we know about Shadow by the end of the previous two games. We know that there was a Shadow, possibly, that was created aboard the Ark 50 years ago, who was friends with Maria, and then Maria let Shadow escape the Ark during the Ark raid by forcing him into an escape pod, and that's about the extent of what we know actually happened to the original Shadow. We don't have any conclusive proof that any Shadow that we've seen since then is that same Shadow, beyond the fact that he has these memories. So then this Shadow with complete amnesia, only able to remember a few things, namely Maria's death and how that happened, is left very empty inside. He's like, what is going on? Who am I? This is all I can remember about myself, and I don't even know what it means. So it makes sense that he would want answers at the beginning of Shadow the Hedgehog. And then in the opening cutscene, we see this alien race start to invade the Earth, and one of the aliens, who's much larger than the others, comes and talks to Shadow, and he's like, it's the promised time. You promised to give me the 7 Chaos Emeralds. And Shadow's like, I don't know what that means. So then the rest of the game, for the most part, is you going through these branching pathways of story, and the mission that you choose to complete for each level has you go to one or the other of the possible next stages in the pathway. And the story kind of jumps all over the place, but I think that might have not been necessarily intentional, but I think it's better that way, because I don't think we're supposed to take anything that's happening in any of these storylines as literal. I think this is actually trying just to look into Shadow's broken psyche, and basically this is possibilities of what could happen to Shadow based on how he would be influenced by the different forces that are trying to control him. And what actually ends up happening, that we'll see for the true ending of the game, is Shadow gets the 7 Chaos Emeralds somehow, but on his own terms. We don't know what that looks like, but that's how it eventuates. And then the Black Doom character comes and takes the emeralds from Shadow and sets his comet home onto the Earth, and plans to basically turn humanity into like livestock of sorts, and like just take over the planet and all that. So then of course Sonic and friends and Shadow all team up to try and stop him, but it turns out that Shadow is really the only one person that can do this, because he is actually created with Black Doom's DNA, and so he is able to face off against Black Doom, and then he saves the day. He removes the comet from the Earth and stops the Black Arms. And during this sequence, we also get a second look at Professor Gerald Robotnik, Eggman's grandfather, the person who created Shadow, and we see that he was just desperate to create the ultimate life form because he wanted to help Maria, because this is never really explicitly stated in any of the games, but Maria is supposed to have some kind of terminal illness, and so Gerald Robotnik's involvement with Project Shadow and trying to create the ultimate life form is ultimately aimed at doing something that can help Maria. And he's just not able to create what he wants, so he essentially makes a deal with this malignant entity, which is Black Doom. You help me create the ultimate life form, and I will arrange for the ultimate life form to grant you the 7 Chaos Emeralds when you make a return in 50 years. Because the comet that Black Doom lives on passes by the Earth every 50 years. So that is what Gerald says to Black Doom, but what he actually intends is that he will make it so that Shadow will be able to prevent Black Doom's plan from taking place. And for some reason, he never tells this Shadow that we've seen, but that's generally what the plan is. Then, when the government finds out about his deal, like his use of Black Doom, they decide to raid the Ark and destroy Project Shadow and everybody aboard the Ark. And so one of the casualties in that is Maria, and Maria's death basically drives Gerald insane. And this person who for the longest time was only intent on helping Maria and the greater humanity at large becomes fraught with guilt and rage, which in turn makes him decide to completely alter Shadow's purpose, which whether he does this by actually altering Shadow's memories is debatable. I don't think it's ever actually stated in the game, but it's clear that for whatever reason, Shadow's initial memory of Maria was not the full story. So basically, he's going to exterminate everybody. That's his new purpose. But like when Shadow actually realizes that that's not what Maria asked for, and he's like, if that's not even what she asked for, I'm not going to do it. So then he dies, and he comes back, and he doesn't know anything about himself or really anything. And so now he's finding out that this is what the full story is, and he's like, I have to make this right. So he defeats Black Doom. And then the final piece of wrapping up this story that explains everything actually doesn't come in a cutscene. It comes if you play through the fight against Black Doom, the final boss battle. Eventually, as the other characters are talking to Shadow while he's fighting Black Doom, one of the possible voice lines you can hear is of Eggman letting Shadow know that he had a robot save Shadow when he was falling from space and all that after the events of Sonic Adventure 2. So we do get conclusive evidence that even if that Shadow was not the same Shadow that was aboard the Ark 50 years ago, it is the same Shadow that we're playing as today. So Shadow's not an android, he's simply a version of the ultimate life form. And Shadow basically gets to decide his own destiny after that. He puts the past behind him, makes up for any wrongdoing he could have caused, and I think that's actually really cool for his character. And we'll see in future games, he is probably one of the more well-developed and complex character among Sonic and his friends. And overall, I would say that the actual gameplay of this game is really solid. I like most of the levels, I like most of the missions, and they all have really cool settings and really cool music. And it's just overall one of the better Sonic game experiences. And you don't have to see all of it as canon, because all of it could not possibly be canon. In fact, I think none of the branching pathways is completely canon, if canon at all. But it's a really interesting concept for a game, and I know they took the dark, edgy stuff to its logical extreme. They gave Shadow a gun, basically, and also included all the swearing. which I can get past, and I actually really am glad they included the guns, because they make the combat in this game really fun, in my opinion. There's just so many different weapons that you can use, and so many different ways you can use them, and you have those weapons on top of the already pre-established adventure-style gameplay, and it just makes for a good gameplay experience, in my opinion. So if you haven't ever played Shadow the Hedgehog, I would recommend you try it out. I know that I spoiled a lot of the story beats for this, but it really is a very complex game with a lot of branching pathways, so there's still more to explore. I kind of just wanted to sort of explain that even though it's in some ways feels like a rehashing of the original Shadow arc we had in Sonic Adventure 2, there's a very real reason for why Shadow is getting a new arc. It's because he literally doesn't remember the old arc, and so he's a completely blank character that needs to find his purpose. So that's gonna do it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.